Hashtag Black AF is Kenya Barris's latest foray into smart and daring social satire and family dynamics. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby. I'm here with the show's creator and star, Kenya Barris. Kenya, the opening credits of the show, against a backdrop of people like Obama and Malcolm X and Colin Powell and Muhammad Ali, Nelson Mandela, are emblazoned with unapologetically, unforgettably, unabashedly, unforgivingly Black AF. Is that ultimately the point? That's it. Thank you for clarifying. Is that the point? Is that affirmation ultimately the point of this show?
Yeah, and I think, the notion of, like, I've had people talking like, oh my God, the idea that that's happening, what's happening in the world right now, it's so coincidental. And first of all, coincidence has been proved to mathematically be impossible. You know what I'm saying? It's something that we use as people because we don't know how to describe it. But no, it wasn't a coincidence. The whole purpose of the show was to be unabashedly real and honest and outrageous in some because it's dysfunctional parenting, but dysfunctional parenting is parenting, and I feel like I wanted to show a different image of Black culture. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to show a different lane. It's still a lane, and at the same time, you see that the same sort of problems that I faced when we were, in some type of government assistance, some of those same type of problems were happening now, and I'm facing now with the things. And I wanted to show the growth, you know what I'm saying, the growth of my personal life, the growth of Black culture within America. But at the core of it, it's a family story. And it's about, talking about what it's like to raise a family and how important it is to sort of, for me personally, to be as open and honest with my kids as possible, and to admit the failures that I constantly, have and am trying to overcome.
I think that's the beauty of the show as well. For anybody who hasn't seen it yet, it's very relatable. You don't have to be African American to relate to what these people are going through. It's a very universal issue. If you're a parent like I am, there was a lot of times where I was nodding, going, yeah, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So it's that's what I love about it. But I think what I really found very interesting, which I didn't expect, was the title of the show is affirming and proud. But there's this undercurrent of discomfort that the main character feels with his success and excess. Do you agree that there's a dichotomy within the show that he's always grappling with?
Absolutely. I think it's, Du Bois talked about it, in his writing, like the idea of just the dual nature of being Black and American in this country. Like we're constantly having to speak two languages. And I feel like the notion of the character was feeling a little bit happy and George Jefferson boastful about, like I made it, I did it, but at the same time a little bit sheepish and like concerned about how the presentation, how it looks. Does he look irresponsible? Does he look stereotypical? Like who are his kids? Like the idea, of taking where I had some of the amazing stories I got to tell and continue to get to tell in Blackish, but to now do them unfiltered through a lens that and showing something that has grown up with me. My career is a lot different than 7 years ago, 8 years ago when I started Blackish, and my life has changed. Although it's a lot of the same problems, it still exists, but I wanted to show the growth. I think that's what any family is about. Everyone remembers their first house, everyone remembers the first, time they got a new refrigerator, and to kind of show what's the version of like now that family's grown up and they've had some success in a different way. That was ultimately what I want to do. I got criticized a lot for it, and by some people because they're like, well, this is just doing, Blackish over. And I was like, I'm absolutely doing a version of my story and I might do it again, and I might, that's what I was talking to my publicist about the idea that Aaron Sorkin kind of tells the same story masterfully. I'm not a master, but he tells it the same story masterfully with walk and talks and open things and quick, and he is heralded for it. I think that because there's so few of us, meaning Black creators, a lot of times our stories are looked to be the sort of medium for everybody. I have to sort of speak to everyone's exact story at the same time. And obviously that's important. That's impossible, but I think that the way that we sort of start telling different stories are by allowing different people to tell their points of view and their perspectives. And at the same time, let other people tell their points of view and perspectives, but with thematic narrative do we share. And I think in this, we show the thematic narrative of what it's like being Black in America and being Black as fuck. The as fuck hashtag or as fuck mark in social media really has showed that we're a generation now that wants the most pure, an authentic version of whatever your thing is. If you're gay, if you're fat, if you're white, if you're, Spanish, if you're, whatever the case is, what's the most pure, authentic version for you? Because it's not a monolithic branding of any person. What's the most authentic version of your part of that experience? And this is, for me, my most authentic version.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me because, I mean, as soon as you put yourself in those shoes, I would love to be able to say I'm Australian as fuck, and I'm so proud of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing is, we said this offline. I think this is really interesting. You've done plenty of work on network TV, right? And you're saying that it's been quite successful and well received, but this has been very polarizing. Talk us through that dynamic, because that's really interesting. It shows your maturity as a creator that you're prepared to go there and be polarized.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of the things I've done through blessings and fortunes and good luck, have been received, but it received down the middle in sort of a, kind of universally accepted way. This has been really polarizing, but the thing that I have seen is, like, I'd say, when I say really polarizing, I'd say 80-20, but 20 can be really loud. You know what I'm saying? People love it or hate it, but that 20 can be really loud, especially in a time when social media gives everyone a voice, and that voice can seem really, really loud because those people's voices actually amplify, louder because they will find their tribe and their tribe will scream. I feel like it has been probably one of the most rewarding creative experiences I've ever been through, because I now know that there's nothing I do moving forward, unless it's an assignment or something I'm doing for a specific reason, but from a personal place, I would like to do things that in some way are polarizing, because what they do is they start conversations in a different way. I think this is one of the most hashtagged comedies in the history of Twitter. Like, honestly, not even saying I think there's stats around that. Like, it is, and I saw Twitter actually eat itself. I saw it go from a conversation that was, at first it was like there weren't enough of this representation, meaning maybe darker skinned Blacks, or it wasn't enough, this isn't real because they have too much money, or this isn't, or this is just Blackish redone. But then I started seeing that conversation implode and eat itself and self-correct in some aspects, because people said, what, hold on, I was listening to all this and I actually really love it. And there were memes of people like with furrowed grills saying the look I get when people say they don't like Black AF. And I was like, oh my God, like, it was a much more interesting and much more intimate conversation that I was having than I ever had with some of the amazing things we did on Blackish. This was a conversation that actually had people going back and forth, and I really, really, really enjoyed that because I think it's important to art.
Yeah, I mean, when people are engaged, there's probably nothing better. And every creator I speak to says the same thing. If you can engage your audience like that, gold. Speaking of representation in art, because this has come up a little bit, episode 5 addresses that really interestingly, because what you're saying is there are different standards of art created by African Americans. They're held to a different standard. I never thought of it that way. Obviously, I'm coming from a completely different lens, but I found it very interesting. Talk us through what you were aiming for when you touched on that subject.
Well, I think that we are, if you look at sports, in particular, right, which is another part of entertainment, we have become such a integral part of sports, you know what I'm saying? And that we can actually have real conversation about that because there's enough of us. You can say Michael Vick's not as good a quarterback as Tom Brady, and people aren't going to cut your head off and say, this is racist or whatever. Or you can say, I like Allen Iverson over Kobe Bryant. It doesn't hurt Kobe Bryant or Allen Iverson's legacy. But I think the notion of, because we're so nascent still in this particular field, and we're just getting our footing, that the idea of sort of criticism within the Black community in particular, and in the white, and in the white community for sure, but criticism is always a little bit like, between me and you, like, it's like, the idea of like, that was amazing, between me and you. Like, we're not in a place where we can sort of like say it out loud as loud. And I feel like it is I think personally, what I was trying to get to is that I think that we are at the place now where we're ready to publicly have dialogue. I don't think we're ready to tear each other down yet. You know what I'm saying? But we can critique. You know what I'm saying? I think we can critique. I think that, the idea that Tyler Perry is not for everyone to be fine, but you can't say that Tyler Perry is not absolutely beloved group of because they actually enjoy his work, not because he's Black. You know what I'm saying? And should those group of people's opinion be, not counted? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like those group of people's opinion is just as important as the people who like Judd Apatow or like whatever. And so, but I think that we have to be able to now critically talk about Tyler Perry's work, critically talk about and accept the people who love it, accept the people who don't, and have open conversations, because that opens up his creative, lens and the creative lens of people coming behind him and, people who are ahead of him who might want to come back and do other things as well.
Yeah.
So that was the whole point of the episode, is to say we are at the place where we want and need to, interrogate and put each other up to a higher standard. But at the same time, we're not quite at the tear down place yet, because we are still getting, going.
Yeah. And I think that challenges perceptions by people of color. It also challenges especially white liberal people who would probably never want to step on the toes of anybody of color, but obviously, we should be able to talk about art in a certain way. Right. I found it really amusing that each episode title uses a variation of the words because of slavery. And then I started thinking, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to find that amusing. And then I go through this whole liberal bubble mentality. It's ridiculous, but it's there. What were you going for in those episode titles? I thought that was actually really cool, that the way that you did that.
I mean, I think what we're experiencing right now in society, you know what I'm saying? I took a lot of shit because people were like, talking shit about the title, but like what we're experiencing now in society, it actually really harkens back to exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah. Is that so many of the things that we experience on a day-to-day basis, so many of our behaviors, so much of the world around us is still because of that 400-year, descendancy of trauma, you know what I'm saying? And marks that we're still, trying to get across. And that's not just for Black people, that's for every American and people all around the world. It's one of the biggest human atrocities we've ever seen. And yet there's never been a prosecutable case of it, because it wasn't illegal. And how do you sort of take a people, I think that Jim Crow in some aspects was worse than slavery, because how do you take a people after 400 years of enslavement and say, okay, it's over, go back into the world amongst the same people who were enslaving them? You don't give them any real chances at higher education. You know what I'm saying? You don't, give them there's no real financial backing to them. There's no real acceptance to them as a people. They're constantly being, our hair care products were a big thing for us because we were trying to assimilate and make our hair straighter, because we just wanted to be liked. We just wanted to be accepted. And so how can that not be a part of how we function on a day-to-day basis? I feel like it is, I was trying to say something that I think that some people didn't get, and maybe things that happen, unfortunately now, you'll understand it in a different way. I feel like I have never, this is a crazy thing to say, I've never felt like a show that I've worked on, never even thought of it, but I'm like, this show needs to be in the Emmy conversation, not because it needs or because of my own particular desires or ego, but because it needs to sort of say, there is a voice that, like we're seeing is happening in the world, that is not being heard. There are frustrations, there is angst, there are things that people, upon the first top layer want to dismiss, but they need to actually be heard. And I kind of feel like things like awards, things like ratings, things like, people mentioning them, just whatever. I think all those things help to broaden the conversation and to open up the doors for other creators, from niche groups, who might have real interesting conversations that are about the American experience they have not been seen as the American experience. They've been seen as a niche experience, but we're a lasagna. That's what I could say America is. You know what I'm saying? Each layer makes it a little bit better. And that's what, you get a piece of lasagna, you want to make sure every bite has every single layer. That's when it's best. You know what I'm saying? That's the tableau that makes Americana, when it's at what it should be, when it's the actual American dream.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one before, and I love that, especially because I could eat lasagna every day. I'm half Italian. Um, so
Which from what I understand is not a true Italian dish. You
it's
know what I'm
really
saying?
hard, but I mean, I'll take it. I'll take it.
I'll take it too.
I think I have a bit of a lasagna and pizza problem, but that's a whole other interview we'll do
I wouldn't call
another
that a problem.
So like, I mean, let's get a little bit deeper if we can, because we're in the midst of hopefully a period of transformational change, right? You know, we're challenging views on Black representation, on law enforcement, on equality. And I mean, Spike Lee was at Anderson Cooper this week, and he said it's about deeds and not words.
Right.
And you're presenting a show that gives African Americans and people of color generally a voice, and it's a really polarizing and interesting and controversial voice, and that's fine. What would you like to see more of to reform our culture and system?
More polarizing, controversial, loud, disruptive voices that are totally different from this one, getting an opportunity to be seen and heard and actually become part of the diaspora in terms of what we're presenting to television. You know what I'm saying? I think the notion of what people of color, whether they be Black, Spanish, I don't even know if you say Latin, Asian, you know what I'm saying, whatever, you know, Native American, which is not Native American, you know what I'm saying, but whatever their story is, it's part of what makes us all American. And I think that those voices need to be able to tell their stories in as honest and authentic of a story as they can tell. And you find your truth in it, because your truth will come from the humanity of those people. It's not from them trying to answer everyone's call for what they believe is right or wrong, but you find your humanity within them. And I think that spreads the notion of what real America should be.
And then at the same time, you're being outspoken, but you're also being really self-deprecating, which I didn't expect. Like in the first episode, Drea says you're a one-trick pony and a racial profiteer, and I was a little speechless. I'm like, oh, are we going there? And then it felt like Curb Your Enthusiasm a little bit. So the leading man's the butt of a joke. Is that what you were going for? Because that's where I really started to get into the comedy of the show.
I really feel like that is my life. I feel like I'm always sort of the butt of the joke, even when I don't know it. I feel like I'm hoping I am because I'm thinking I am. So I'm hoping I'm not just thinking this. But I definitely feel like comedy in general opens up to me when comedians are willing to sort of let themselves be the sacrificial lamb, you know. And I kind of feel like I wanted to sort of open up the absurdity of some of the things that I think and feel and who that character was, so that you were able to take in more of the other things that were being said. Like that comedy gives you, like I've said it before, like a spoonful of sugar to take down the medicine. And if the lead character and the writer in the center of it, if I felt like if I could skewer myself a little bit, maybe it would make the other things that were being said a little bit easier for people to hear.
Yeah. Well, you've said that you wanted this show to make some noise. I think you've definitely achieved that. And we look forward to more of it. Kenya, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you promising me an Emmy. That was really, I appreciate that. You didn't have to do that.
I know. Look, I pulled some strings. We're going to make it happen. I think it's time, you know.
Thanks so much, man. And please be safe there. Seriously.
You too.